I'm missing the meme. I only see part of it. Was that the
That was when that one lady like grabbed.
grabbed him and then he slapped her away?
Yeah.
Boy,
Forgot.
so that was New Year's.
Yeah.
So that this is really the first thing that happened in 2020 sets the entire year off.
It's all down.
The Pope controls everything.
Trying to
I'm
figure
gonna
out how
I'm gonna switch the gallery.
there we go.
All right. Okay, Lukas Steffensmeier, how are you doing?
Oh man. I woke up this morning and allergies finally hit me. So I'm just like, wow.
Literally a minute ago, I I I walked out of frame to pick this up because it's the
Yep.
exact same thing for me.
I've been
It's bad right now.
yeah, I've been like actually taking allergy pills like a good boy, but then didn't over the weekend, and I can just hear my mother in the back of my head being like, "I told you so."
For me, it's a morning thing. It's always like right when I wake up, I'm just sneezing and runny nose, watery eyes, and then during the day it's fine, but it'll
It's
kick
yeah,
up.
it's definitely at nighttime. Well, and part of the problem was last night I also ate an entire bag of like those Sour Patch Kids watermelons,
Oh
and so
yeah,
I think like all the sugar just like clung to my throat.
yeah, that is not good. All
Oh,
right, so I want to keep it to a tight 30. Now,
good.
I think you and I both have a reputation for waxing on philosophically. Um, having to record those videos for myself, I don't know. You're making videos too, right? So recording myself and then putting them up, I I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm not saying anything here. I'm boring myself. I'm tuning myself out, but I don't go back and fix it because it's too much work for me. So I'm gonna try to keep things to a short I'm gonna try to keep my words to a minimum here.
I'll do the same, though. Unfortunately, I can't edit out all my and I have found that I say the word right so often.
Same. I say again. I always begin my sentences with again. Say a lot of ums.
Yep.
Um, there we go. There's one.
Mine tend to start with so right, you know.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. It's so awkward to hear yourself. I don't like it. I'm getting a little bit more comfortable as time goes on, but I'm not meant for radio. I'm not a radio guy.
I'm just yeah. I was like, this is really fun. I could be a YouTuber, and then I'm like, this takes so much work.
And then I've also got like my apartment, the walls are pretty thin. So not only can I hear other people, but I'm always aware that they can hear me. So my voice, like when I'm talking, I don't know how it sounds right now, but usually when I'm talking in the recordings, it sounds like I'm on NPR or something, and I'm just whispering like, "Hello, everybody, and welcome to NPR."
Oh my gosh. I gotta get a microphone like yours though.
This
Like,
was expensive, but it's a microphone that I've been wanting since I was in high school. So
is
I
it good for
finally had an excuse
recording?
to get one.
Can you record music with that?
Oh yeah, this is the recording mic. Usually for talk, but you can set it to music. Michael Jackson's Thriller recorded on this microphone right here.
I
Not the
gotta.
specific one, but same model.
I've been messing around a bunch with my guitar and GarageBand, but I don't have any fancy microphones. And I found that the only headphones I have a built-in microphone, and so most of the music is going through this like crappy built-in.
Yeah, that's bad. It's real bad. I wanted the quality to be as good as possible, but I'm having a hard time because of this specific microphone. I'm having a hard time making it louder. I feel like I'm talking pretty loud right now, but chances are it's picking up super quietly. So I'm
It's
still
good.
messing around with the technology.
It's working for me.
Okay, good. All right. So, just to give you an idea of where we're at in our class right now, we've just been focusing on secular ethics uh, just to give us some ground that we can work off of, a foundation, if you will. And so now that we're finished with all of those secular systems, now we can jump into just introducing Catholic ethics, or at least, there's a couple of different ways that we can go about it. We could either go to Catholic ethics itself, or how Catholicism responds to all of those other systems that we laid out. Um, so I thought it would be best to have you as our expert in Catholicism, because this year you're teaching, a lot of these students had you last year teaching the same thing. You go through the history of the church and you're saying like, okay, here is how our idea of right and wrong formed. So I guess this is not a load question, but it's a tough question to answer. Just throwing it out at you. Why bother listening to Catholicism when it comes to ethics?
Oh man, why bother? And I imagine saying, 2,000 years and still standing despite all the like weird stuff and garbage that happens in the church history isn't a great answer. Um, I would say why bother, because there seems to be, I think the church has some insight to the human person that we tend to gloss over. And what I mean by that is really this doctrine and this idea of sin, which a lot of us were like, don't talk about sin, right? That's gross, right? I don't want to feel bad about myself. But I think to like really get at human nature and like who we are, we actually have to like grasp that, and I think the church has probably the best grasp of like the brokenness of human nature. Because really to accurately like understand morality and like how humans ought to operate with each other, we have to like accurately get human nature. And if we don't get human nature right, then everything's going to fall apart. And so I guess why listen to the church is I think the church has the most tenable uh, understanding of human nature, right? I think it's the most accurate, and then everything from that flows.
So I've been doing this. Just I think it's a good way to, if you stand for something, to test that. The best way to go about it is by listening to its sharpest critics. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and videos of people who are just critical of Catholicism, and there tends to be a repeating factor that I keep on hearing again and again and again. And the understanding is that Catholicism in general may have been important at one point in history, and may have been necessary at one point in history just to like build up society. But right now, all that Catholicism it's an institution that's designed to make money.
Hmm.
And
We're not doing a very good
well,
job of
I will say that criticism is valid, given how much the Catholic Church is worth, how much we have financially, and then also considering all of I don't know if you covered this in class, in your class either last year or this year. I didn't cover it in my class, but there's been a lot of shady dealings with with the economy and the bank in the Vatican,
that.
and
Oh yeah.
it digs this idea that Catholicism um, is just a financial institution. It gives a little bit of credence to that.
If we want to go conspiracy theories, we could talk all about Cardinal Pell and the fact that, you
Oh gosh, don't get me started. This would be a 4-hour conversation if we were talking about Pell
yeah,
and the
I'm
Vatican Bank.
I'm partially convinced the Italian mafia is money laundering through the Vatican Bank.
Partially, I'm 100% convinced. I'm pretty sure there's some mafia members in the Vatican, but enough on that. I'll save that for your class. I'll put on a tinfoil hat for that. But
Oh my god.
so it's So it bothers me because of really one thing. A lot of these critics don't take into account people like you and me who have no power in the church. The only reason why we're Catholic is because we genuinely believe its teachings, not the politics, not the Vatican, not anything like that, but the moral and the doctrinal teachings. Have we been brainwashed, or is there anything valid about Catholic teaching?
The funny thing is, I love the brainwashing idea because I was raised Catholic, but I really wasn't raised Catholic at all. And so to some extent, I look at my life and like my family and my upbringing, and like me becoming Catholic is kind of more of a rebellious thing than a brainwashing. Um, that's just that comment. Sorry, what was the question again?
Is there validity to Catholic teaching?
Oh yeah, no, I think for sure. Um, I mean, yes, there's corruption in the institution. I mean, that's nothing new. Let's go back to the 400s when Augustine's around. Nothing's really changed, unfortunately.
All right, let's go back to the like when Jesus was alive, before the church was even founded.
Go to Judas.
Right, he's the guy who says, "Hey, we should take that perfume that this woman is washing you with and sell it to the poor,
Right, because
or sell it and then use the money and give it to the poor."
Cause,
These are criticisms that we've been hearing even before the church was around.
oh yeah. Well, and I think like the hardest thing when talking about like the church is like when we're talking about Catholic moral teaching, we are not talking about like the Vatican as an institution, right? When we're talking about like when the church teaches something, that's a little bit different than just an institution that's in the here and now. Though it does have this continuation throughout all of time. Um, excuse me. One of the other struggles is, and this is if you don't want to be good at politics, like don't listen to this. Excuse me. If you want to be good at politics, ignore this. Just because someone says one thing and does the opposite does not negate what they've said. And I think that's one of the struggles with the church is um, we're not great at always living out what we teach. Um,
No, going back to your original point about human nature, uh, every single one of us, no matter what you believe, whether you're a Catholic or not, whether you're the most devout Catholic in the world or whether you're the most ardent atheist in the world, as a human being, you go through an ebb and flow within your life of being proud of your actions and being not proud of your actions, feeling like you did the right thing and feeling like you did the wrong thing. So not only is that part of human nature, and not only is that found in each individual, it's found in the Catholic Church as a whole. And then it's also found something that I've picked up on as I've researched Catholicism more. It pretty much lines up, our history pretty much lines up exactly with the history of Israel in the Old Testament. Like this going back and forth between, you know, loving God and being gung ho about our relationship with Him, and then He gives us all of these gifts, and we act like they're ours, and
we were
we
the
made them, and then that screws us over, and then we have to go back to square one.
It's
And right
like
now, Catholicism is on a, I would say Catholicism is on decline, just power wise, because super powerful institution maybe 50 years ago, still a really powerful institution, but is losing its power on a daily basis.
right, and to one sense or to one aspect, um, it's nothing new, right? There's been ebbs and flows, but I definitely feel like humans are. I love that meme where there's like the one person that's like, I made this, and you give it to the other person, and the person looks at
Yeah.
it. The person walks away and says, I made this.
Yeah.
I mean that's humans and God in a.
Mr. Steffensmeier coming in with the memes.
I love them so much. But I think one of my all-time favorite verses in Scripture just speaks exactly to what we're talking about. I think it's Paul, it's either to the Romans or Corinthians, but he says, like, I do not understand myself. I always do what I don't want to do, and I never do the good that I want to do. Like, for some reason, no matter how hard I try, like, and generally try to, like, be a, quote, good person, I'm just really good at getting in my own way, and, like, I don't do it. Right? You imagine, you sit there and like, I'm gonna help this homeless person, and then you get in your car and there's a homeless person like there with a sign saying like anything, and you just driven out of a like drive-through and you have food and you're like, I could easily give them this food, but then I don't. Right? And so yeah.
Yeah. So piggybacking on bringing up St. Paul and personhood, we asked that question in my class. What is a person? And I let each one of my classes have discussions to try to get to an answer that we could all agree on. And I offered the definition from Boethius, which all my classes agreed on. A person is an individual substance of a rational nature. Now, here's something that's really unique about Catholics and Catholicism. We don't see Catholicism as simply an institution. We treat the Catholic Church, and maybe we sound weird or crazy for this, but we treat the Catholic Church as a person. We say the Catholic Church is an individual substance of a rational nature.
She's our mother.
Right. That's why we refer to it as she. We don't say it. But I think the thing that would be difficult there is substance. St. Paul is saying, even though we are many parts, we are all one body, one spirit in Christ. That's our substance. We make up the bride of Christ, and we're united in that way. So what makes a person though, if you want to chalk it up to one simple thing, any ideas?
It's relationship. I mean, that's the root of it. And I'm kind of pulling from Pope Benedict here. But he simply says a person is a relation. That like, I cannot consider myself having personhood unless I have some other to have a relationship with. And it's just kind of drawing from, I can't remember the guy's name right now, but the work I and Thou.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. I'm forgetting too.
Uber.
That was a quick side story. Oh gosh, this is one of the most embarrassing things in my life. I've told my students this before. I've probably told you this before. I had in college, before I could graduate, I had to do an oral comprehensive exam. We had to do two: a written comprehensive exam and an oral comprehensive exam. I did fine on the written part. Oral comprehensive exam, I go into this boardroom with the entire theology faculty sitting in these high chairs.
I'm assuming they had like the white wigs as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. And they're sitting there, and I feel I am just like so tense with, oh my gosh, I go in there knowing that I was going to fail. And they asked me a question. One of the professors asked me a question. I don't even remember what the question was about, but I know my answer was the I thou thing. And I talked for like 5 minutes on the I thou relationship. And after that, it was a mess. It was like, nope, you fail.
Gosh, did they? Oh shoot, what is the movie? Did they show you the Billy Madison clip?
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, And may God have mercy on your soul.
I hope that's what they did.
It definitely felt like that. But I'm sorry. What were you saying about the I thou?
Oh yeah. That a person is inherently defined by its relationship. So with the I thou, I cannot consider or even comprehend the concept of I-ness or like a me unless there is something other or different than me.
Right.
If you do a thought experiment, let's say you are the only thing that exists, right? Perhaps you're God, but that is it. There's nothing more, nothing less, just one. There is no other thing than you, so you could never say this is me and that's you, because that's also you. So you would have no use for this idea of an I. And so in order to have an I, there must be a you, there must be something different. But Augustine says something along the lines of, what is more personal and belonging to us than ourselves, than my me-ness, right? Who I am. And yet I can't define or even consider who I am unless there's a you. And so what belongs least to us than my I-ness? And so that idea of a person is it's a relationship, that I'm defined by my relationships with others, and that's kind of the me-ness. And that's why we call the Trinity persons.
So right. Yeah, and we talked about that a little bit. But that relationship aspect is really important, because when it comes to morality, most of our decisions we base right and wrong on how they affect those around us. But then what do you say to somebody who uses the argument, well, doing this, even though you say it's wrong, it's not hurting anybody?
As in, like, is not hurting anyone else?
Yeah.
To some extent, it depends on what the thing is. But if it's hurting yourself, if you say it's not hurting anyone else, generally what that's talking about then is the assumption is the person thinks that I think that what they're doing is hurting themselves, but no one else. Maybe that's not always the case, but even if you harm yourself and no one else, that still affects others. Like what I do for myself and how I treat myself, even if I'm the only one who's going to really get the results, even negative or positive, that will still affect others. So even if it's not hurting anybody, every action we do, no matter what, will affect someone else. To some extent, and maybe don't quote me on this, I'm not convinced that there's any act that we ever do that doesn't affect someone else in some way. In the sense that it could form us into who we are and then later inform a decision of how I treat someone else.
Yeah, for sure. Butterfly effect.
Yeah, that's kind of it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because what I do becomes who I am. And so even if I'm doing something that doesn't harm anyone else, that will eventually become me. And then suddenly I'm interacting with people.
Right. Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. So just going back to the idea of personhood, and then also tying that back to the Catholic Church, I feel like a part of that definition from Boethius regarding person, so an individual substance of a rational nature, the key word there is rational. And we discussed this a little bit. Reason made up of intellect and will. It's our intellect that really forms us as persons, and it is what gives personhood also to the members of the Trinity, is the intellect. There's something special about that. And so if the Catholic Church is regarded as a person, the Catholic Church must have an individual intellect.
Mm-hmm.
And that intellect, and also, part of the will as well, but that rationality is what's forming the church's positions on certain things. And I don't know how you feel about this, but something that I'm worried about. I don't see any basis to it. Maybe you can be devil's advocate here. The Catholic Church, common argument, the Catholic Church has antiquated views on morality. things that we believe now, just that may have been the case 100 years ago, but things have just changed, and we have to change with the times.
Oh, what an argument. I mean, the fascinating thing with that argument, and this is poking holes in the logic of it, is 100 years from now, things could have changed, and we could look back at the very argument that you just made and say, that's such an old idea. Right? The fact that old ideas are always wrong is such an old idea. So the argument itself is circular. But I think one of the reasons we do that is we think humans have changed more than we actually have. I don't think humans have really changed at all. I just think the circumstances that we live in have changed. For example, I'm sitting in a wonderfully air-conditioned room right now, whereas 100 years ago, that didn't exist. Right? Humans didn't change. The technology and the things we have changed. So, and generally we see that things progress over time, right? For example, technology tends to always progress forward over time. But I don't think humans really have. I would be more in the camp that humans have stayed neutral. I mean, some might argue that humans have gotten worse over time, you know, but that was probably 8th grade me when I was listening to like my dad's 70s music, and I listened to modern music. I'm like, this isn't Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I look at uh, I don't have a TikTok, but I think TikTok is the bane of our existence, and it's a perfect snapshot of how the old times were better than the new times.
Oh my gosh, let me tell you. No, but the thing about morality is morality doesn't change even though we've technologically and scientifically advanced. Because morality is not a natural science. I would say it is a science, but not in the way we usually think of it.
Right.
It's really the science of relationships between humans. But again, humans haven't changed much. Just the modes through which we operate, like technology right now. Incredible improvement right here that we can even have this conversation. But if I say something nasty to you, just because it's 100 years later, that doesn't change the morality of it. If I had said something nasty to you 100 years ago, that's still the same, right? In terms of like figuring out what's happening. So morality seems to be an atemporal thing, which is why saying the Catholic Church has antiquated views is really absurd. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think a big reason why a lot of people hold that argument, though, we see elderly people or older people as more wise, but then they also like, I had this really great professor in college, and he had been teaching for 30 years at the university. He was a history professor. He knew everything about like the French Revolution. That was his specialty, and he was just a master at what he did. Every single day he would come in, he would want to put up a PowerPoint, and he would just fumble with technology, and he would always blame the technology. He would never blame himself, and somebody would help him out, fix it in a second. And this is why I think so many people hold this idea that things are antiquated and outdated and old, is
Right.
because even though we may think that old people or older people are more wise, they're a lot more stubborn about the old times, whereas us younger people are more open and receptive to change.
Right.
And the church is not about change. The church is about being stagnant. And
The church is very slow when she changes, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing, you know, because there's this sense that the old is out of touch, and very often it is. And you know what we're really talking about right now is the genetic fallacy. Whereas genetic fallacy is just saying something is true based off of where it comes from, right? Whether that be a time period or a location.
so just a quick interjection. I made this point, and this is kind of a hot take, might offend some people, but I equated tell me what you think about this. I equated Protestantism with Islam and communism, because all those three, not to criticize what they believe or what they stand for, all those three, and gosh, I'm being super, super kind to Catholicism here, but I mean, I am biased. All of those three, Protestantism, Islam, and communism, they are kind of like a by the book type ideology where we have the truth. And we have to follow this specific path in order to gain fulfillment. But Catholicism is not a by the book religion, and we got to get a lot of criticism for that, because we may like read the Bible and then totally interpret it a different way 100 years from now. That's a double-edged sword. It allows us to change when it's necessary, but it's also like that's kind of a cop out to
Right.
say, oh, we got it wrong, so we're changing things. And boy, that's a fair criticism to make about Catholicism.
Right. No, it is. And the thing with change is it's hard, because everyone knows that the world is messed up. Right? That is not a controversial take. And everyone knows that things need to change. The hard thing is figuring out, man, what needs to change? And that's why there's that double-edged sword of the Catholic Church. Is the church takes a long time to change, because to some extent she seems to feel out the times, right? Tries to be not so affected by the whims of the everyday changes of the times, which when there's a positive change, she can be slow at accepting it. But when there's a negative change, by the time we know it's negative, the church has already, by the time the church would change, it's already seen the natural course of history play out and see, like, it's a good thing we didn't follow that. And so while there's both this sort of sense of like, it's out of touch, just because something's old doesn't mean it's wrong, but at the same time, just because something's old doesn't mean it's right.
Right. Yeah. So I think I was listening to somebody who was, a podcast that was very critical of Catholicism, but somebody gave a fair take of, like, say, you and me, not necessarily the cardinals in the Vatican, but like us believers. Really, at the end of the day, all we want to do is try to pursue truth. You and I want to know the truth, and we need to be able to acknowledge that we don't have the entirety of truth at our disposal.
Right.
There's no way that you and I can know what the truth is, but there's no reason not to try to pursue it, because pursuing it, according to Aristotle, that's what gives you true happiness, right? Is living a virtuous life, and virtue is based in truth. And so strip away all of the grandeur and the pomp and circumstance of the Vatican and beautiful masses and all of that stuff. At the heart of it, really what I think us believers are doing, and what I think everyone in the world should be doing, is trying to pursue the truth.
Right.
And that's really what morality is. It's a reason why, philosophy requires discussions and going back and forth with people, is because if you disagree on something, you need to hash that out in order to come to whatever that small little truth is.
Right. I had a student this year ask me if it was proved with 100% certainty that there was no God, what would I do? And my response had to be, I would follow the truth, right? And I'd have to cease being Catholic.
Yeah, and that's something that's really that's appreciated, at least something that I appreciate about my belief system and the Catholic faith, is that if science tells us something, we got to follow science, because science can't lie. It has no agenda. Maybe scientists have agendas, but science itself is objective, and we have to follow it. And if anything goes against science,
it's almost as, hey, it's like the shirt. We are faith
and reason. I like it. Okay, so we're running out of time. I want to end with One
Oh,
last question.
we
And this is
ran.
a question that I'm going to pose to my students later on. When it comes to morality, does anybody, and this could be, take whatever circumstance you want, just input it here, take whatever groups you want. Does anybody have more authority than everyone else when it comes to determining what is right and wrong? So my students and I disagree sometimes on what is right and what is wrong.
Yes.
Do either of us have more authority?
Oh yeah, I think so.
What is it?
There's the hard one. um, for full transparency, the reason I say that is I'm glad that other people have more authority than I, because it's really hard to figure out what's right and wrong. And maybe that's just a cop out in my life. But I think there's a certain, I want to say, wisdom. I don't have a good answer for this, for the why. I'm curious, what was y'all's argument, and then maybe that will spark something in my brain.
Well, I haven't asked them this question yet. This is at the end of our next note sheet.
So yeah,
But I have mentioned quite a bit this entire year. I think authority is necessary and it's natural. Like it's something that humans need. We need hierarchy, which modern society is saying do away with hierarchy. It's abusive to people in the lower rungs of society. But I think you need someone telling you what to do, and you need someone telling that person what to do,
yeah,
to guide you. Now, if we're following, I don't think anybody. Here's the thing: I don't think anybody can logically disagree with what Jesus teaches, because Jesus, I mean, he seems to have everything right. And any criticism towards Christianity or Catholics is when they go against what Jesus teaches.
right,
And again, what Jesus says is nothing new. He's just reaffirming a lot of valuable information and then making it concise, and that's his teachings as a person. But where was I going with this? Gosh, I've lost my train of thought.
choo.
Gosh.
Do you want me to pick up? I had a thought.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
So I was, thinking about the idea of authority and like why it's actually a good thing. To some extent, it's just practical, because like if like we could say morality, but let's just talk about like modern engineering or like mathematics or really any given field. There is so much knowledge and information out there, and there are people who spent their lives and dedicated to thinking through all these different things, like how to build a building, right? And so it seems that someone who has studied architecture would have a little more authority on how to build something than I would, having like never even looked at architecture. Or like
Right.
somebody who's a musician seems to have a little more authority on like what makes good music than me just like playing around with a guitar, twice a week. And if I wanted to become an expert and like really know what was true in all these different areas, I just don't have time. Like I don't have time to know what's actually the best like architectural designs. I don't know how. I don't have the best time to like. I don't have the most time to like figure out. I don't know what's the best way to do taxes, to make money, to do this, this, and that. And so I let other people spend their lives figuring out all those little niche things, and then they kind of tell me about it. And to some extent, hopefully morality is something that all of us actually spend time trying to figure out, because, if you're actually moral, then you'll be happy. Whereas, if I live in a good house, yeah, that's a good thing, but it's not quite as like deep and personal as morality is. And so it seems to me that those who have spent their lives and kind of studied the wisdom of the past, and those who seem to like get it right, like Plato, Plato seems to have a lot right. And I don't think it's an accident that he has survived this far, because people are pretty good
Right.
at noticing when something is garbage, right?
Yeah. If something can stand the test of time,
It's not an accident.
yeah, there is something valuable about it. And I think most people can find the value in scripture, but their criticisms lie elsewhere. Maybe the way that people carry it out. It's really, humans are annoying, and we let power get to our head. And think of the Catholic Church as much as you and I agree with it, there's no denying that power got to the head of the church. Even today, there are people in the church, and I could name names, but I'm not going to. I'll save that for your class. There are people in the church who let power get to their head, and it's so annoying. This is why I was telling you about this, but I don't recommend this show to any of my students. But the new pope,
Hmm.
I always talk about the young pope. I love the young pope. It's probably one of my favorite shows of all time. The new pope, the second series. It's a very innocent, humble man who's weak and mentally weak and emotionally weak, gets a little taste of power, and just,
It's a
yeah, if no one can, if there's a bunch of people underneath him, then he has control over those people. And this is this was the thought that I forgot about. I was talking about Jesus and how people see the value in him. Um, Something that's really important that Jesus said that I think we should all listen to is that in order to be a good leader, you have to be a servant. You have to serve the people that are under you. So yes, leadership and authority are necessary, but if you're a leader, if you're authority, you need to be serving the people under you. And he didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk. And he was a servant to the people that followed him. So this is our first taste or a little introduction into Catholic ethics. I wish if we were back in school, we would have a lot more time to talk about this stuff. But unfortunately, circumstances don't allow it. But circumstances do allow that I get to have you come and talk to my classes, and first time they've seen you in months. So it's good to know that you're alive and your hair's not too crazy. Did you get a
no.
haircut recently?
Yeah, I went to a barber shop called Les Roommate. It was a
Fancy stuff.
great deal, free.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my hair, I cut my hair really short, and then I wait a few months, and then I get another haircut, and I got it right at the beginning of quarantine. So we'll see how long it lasts.
I'm excited for school to be over, because the first day after school, you know what I'm doing with this beard? It's gone. I'm shaving it.
You got to keep the mustache. Maybe
Oh,
do like a Guy Fawkes or a
just
mustache and a goatee.
or what I could do is I could do like the Civil War stash, where I do that and just shave right here.
Or just go like super Civil War, shave everything until it's like a stubble, and then a super huge mustache.
I hate that, because then it gets in your food, and
But it's super hipster.
I that's
People
what
will think you're even better at music than you are.
I'm it's not bad music. It's just art, because it's hipster.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot in my class. So
I don't. Hey, I'll tell you what. I think music is like the number one thing to talk about objectiveness of art, because like you can look at a bad piece of art and you can be like, there's meaning there, but man, if you listen to somebody playing out of tune or just singing garbage, you laugh.
I'm
But
sure I have a lot of students who would disagree with you on that.
they should listen to my EP then, and then they would agree with me.
Here's a Yoko Ono. Ever listen to Yoko Ono's music?
No,
Just
I
her screaming into a microphone with noise in the background. I remember one time in college, last story, and then I'll let you go because I don't want to keep my students too long either. I remember one time in college, uh, my friends and I went to, there's this really hipster area in Dallas. There's a hipster neighborhood called Deep Ellum, and there's a bunch of bars and coffee shops. And one time there's a bar that was having an instrumental music night.
how fun. This isn't
And
the Dallas Arts Center, is it?
no, this is this is like real hipster stuff. Like this is quintessential hipster stuff. And so we went there to make fun of the instrumental music. And there's literally a guy there who's just got like a table of different objects, and he's just hitting the objects with and into the microphone. He's got like spoons, and he's just like hitting the spoons in the microphone. And we were just like, this is ridiculous. And we were sitting in benches, and there was a super hipster guy sitting next to us, and he's got like big earrings. He's got one of those Civil War mustaches and big wireframe glasses and like short hair at the top and then long hair on the sides. And he's just like, it's just noise. It's spoons hitting spoons. And he's like getting into it. He's just like, we were making so much fun of them. It wasn't very Christian of us, but it was really fun.
Let me tell you, I always went to a folk circle with a monk at St. John's, and he had a day where he was just like, I've really been curious about using instruments as instruments and making music in the ways they weren't intended. So he's like, let's just like have a song where the only rule is you just can't play your instrument as intended. And I just was like, I don't know what happened, because at one point he's got his guitar and he's just like bellowing into like the hole in the guitar, and I'm just sitting there like, okay, this is where I'm at. Life choices brought me here, and I'm intentionally staying.
Well, it's a good thing. At least it wasn't a hipster, and at least it was a monk. So
Yeah.
All right, Lukas Steffensmeier, thank you so much for being here for me and my class. Hopefully they get to see you before the school year ends. It'd be nice to see some students.
I know. I tell you what, it would be great.
Yeah.
Actually have dialogue.
Right. All right.
Would be horrified at what we're doing.
I think he'd be pretty proud, considering the state of the world. At least some people are still carrying on these conversations. So
that's true.
All right, this is great. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on.
All right.
Like and subscribe to this guy.
Please don't. And like and subscribe to this guy, right?
Yeah, just don't make me too rich and famous, because then power will corrupt me, because I am weak.
That's right. Full circle.
Full circle.
All right.
Like,
okay, bye.
bye.